Man stopped answering door for 7 days, so instinct told UPS to break in. As he turned to leave, something sitting on the porch immediately caught his eye, and a sick wave of worry washed over him. Something wasn't right. He just knew it. He could feel it in his bones. He stomped back up the steps and slowly opened the door and popped his head inside. There was something there. His instincts had been right, but the situation was so very wrong. Todd Holland was a Navy veteran, and he knew something wasn't right when he saw it. His keen eye for detail had been honed in all his years of training to pick up on the subtler details that most men wouldn't notice. Now at age 55, he was a UPS driver, and he enjoyed his work and the gentle pace that came with it. Driving from home to home making deliveries. It was a far cry from when he'd served in the Navy. Todd had built quite a reputation in Ashe County, North Carolina. His work took him across the county, where he made many acquaintances on his travels. He prided himself on building a special relationship with all of his packages recipients. He knew their names and they knew his. But the residents of Ashe County never knew just how lucky they were with the ex-US Navy SEAL looking out for them, until it was almost too late. Todd was particularly fond of one elderly man he would see regularly on his route, and he would always be on the front porch to greet him with a friendly wave when he delivered his packages. He always looked forward to seeing him, so he thought it was strange when one day he wasn't there. He was concerned at first, but shrugged the feeling of worry off. Maybe he was being paranoid. After all, he didn't know what the elder man did during the day. Perhaps he'd gone out to run some errands or was visiting relatives. That must be it, he reasoned, before leaving the package on the front porch. On the way home that Friday evening, Todd couldn't help but let his concerns get the better of him. He couldn't stop thinking about the elderly man who was so conspicuously absent on his route. Scenario after scenario played itself out in his mind until he turned into his own driveway. Once inside, his wife greeted him with a kiss, and all his worries began to melt away. It was only on the following Tuesday that he would learn the awful truth. Monday, as they sometimes do, came and went in the blink of an eye. Now it was Tuesday, and Todd had a heavy day ahead. There were a lot of deliveries to be made that day, and Todd all but forgot about the elderly man. That is, until he saw his name on the list of his deliveries. He was relieved that he'd be able to put his fears that had plagued him on Friday to rest. Surely the man would be there waiting for him today. As the evening drew near, he finally made it to his friend's driveway and pulled in. He unfastened his seatbelt and went to the back of the van where all the day's packages were stored meticulously. It would be his second to last stop, so the package would be easy to locate. He grabbed the cardboard box and briskly walked up to the front porch. Todd noticed immediately that his friend was not there to greet him this time either, and he felt all his worries bubbling up to the surface again. He tried to calm himself. Perhaps the man was sick in bed. There was no need to jump to conclusions. But still, he couldn't shake the little voice in the back of his mind. But there was one way to know for sure. Todd held his breath and looked down, and lo and behold, there was Tuesday's package sitting right there where he'd left it, untouched. His suspicions began to mount until they reached a panic crescendo, and he banged on the door 3 times, loudly enough to be sure that the elderly man would hear them. But there was no answer. Todd waited for a few seconds before frantically turning the doorknob, and he was surprised to find the door unlocked. All his instincts were screaming at him as he peered inside, but all he could see was darkness. The man's Rottweiler was barking frantically in the back garden. "Hello?" he yelled, and before he could get an answer, his gut told him to run. There was a faint outline on the floor of the darkened hallway, and Todd feared the worst. He felt chills prickle up his spine as he ran towards the man, lying in a heap where he'd fallen on the ground. All his fears had been right, he kept thinking, so why hadn't he checked into the house on Friday when he knew something was wrong? To his relief, the man was alive. Barely, but he was there. He began to speak to Todd softly as he frantically dialed 911. "I love you," he whispered as he gripped Todd's hand. The ambulance arrived shortly after Todd made the call, and the 88-year-old man was taken to the hospital where he was stabilized and is said to be in fair condition. Before he was wheeled away, he revealed a terrible detail about his ordeal. The man told the paramedics that he had fallen and been unable to get up. Even more startling, he had lain where he'd fallen for 7 whole days. He lived alone, and there had been nobody there to help him. Nobody had heard his cries for help. The paramedics were astounded and said that he wouldn't have survived one more day in the condition he was in. But Todd only had one enormous regret. "I started beating on the door, hollering his name, calling the house again," Todd recounted tearfully. "I tried the door and it was unlocked, so I opened the door and stuck my head in. That's when I saw him laying on the floor. I just wish I could have found him on Friday." A close friend of mine said it was just not in God's will to find him Friday, that God's got a plan for everything, and it was in his plan for me to find him yesterday. But Todd's taking a valuable lesson away from the awful ordeal, and he's made it his mission to make others working in his profession aware. "I made it a point to tell the guys at work this morning," he explained. Todd hopes to educate others about reading the signs and taking action where necessary. If you deliver to people, and a lot of people that we deliver to, especially in these rural areas, us, the FedEx man, and the mailman might be the only people they see during the week," Todd said. "I told them, if you realize and get a gut feeling that something's wrong, check it out. It probably is." "Everyone's busy, but we have to stay aware when something doesn't seem right," Todd added. "There's no reason this man should be alive today. He's the miracle." Todd's message to the world is simple. Always look out for your neighbors and always trust your gut instincts. You never know, you could end up saving a life. While the elderly gentleman was being taken away in the ambulance, Todd heard him say, "That's a true friend." And Todd plans to take this responsibility seriously. He's even started to devise a buddy system that he plans to put into action to check up on his friend in the future. He also made arrangements for the man's dog to be cared for while his owner recovers.